WRMI Radio Miami International, Okeechobee, Florida, USA. Contact us at info@WRMI.net. Visit us on the web at www.WRMI.net.
Hello and welcome to the first episode of Postcard Panorama, a shortwave radio conversation. It's January 2022, and I want to wish you all a happy and healthy new year. And thank you for joining me today. This month we're celebrating anything new, and we'll have poetry, a bit of commentary, special guests, and of course, listener stories. I'd like to start off by reading The Year, a poem by Ella Wheeler Wilcox. The Year. What can be said in New Year rhymes that's not been said 1,000 times? The New Year's come, the old years go. We know we dream, we know. We rise up laughing with the light. We lie down weeping with the night. We hug the world until it stings. We curse it then and sigh for wings. We live, we love, we woo, we wed. We wreathe our brides, we sheet our dead. We laugh, we weep, we hope, we fear. And that's the burden of the year. This poem is in the public domain, and you can read it on the Academy of American Poets website, poets.org. I'll post a link to all the poems read on the show in our website, postcardpanorama.com. Since this is our first episode, I'd like to introduce myself. So hello, I'm Tammy Walker. As T.D. Walker, I'm a poet and science fiction writer, and I'm the author of 2 poetry collections. I'm also a radio enthusiast, and I've written radio into my poetry more of late. I just wrapped up a chapbook manuscript that used as subjects the Heart Project in Alaska, Conrad, and the Russian woodpecker, among other things. I'm also interested in stories around radio, particularly shortwave radio. Recently, writer Joan Didion passed away, and in the BBC remembrance of her, they included a quote that says better than I could why we need stories. We tell ourselves stories in order to live. I think the same is true is what we want to live with as well, in this case, radio. For shortwave, I think popular perception is that it's a strange corner of the spectrum full of fanaticism, propaganda, and numbers. There's some truth to that, but there's a larger truth in the music you'll find, shows like Radio Northern Europe International and Encore, for instance, in news from places you might not otherwise seek out, in radio about radio, like Glenn Hauser's World of Radio, in interactive technologies, I'm thinking radiogram here. Underlying all this is the humanity behind the medium, the human stories and the news and the drama and the music tell about our sense of wonder and place and connection. It's also a place that you have to come to with intention to give your attention to, which is increasingly a lost art. If we want shortwave to continue, we need to tell stories about the medium that speak to its potential, about the good that it can do, about the good that it does do. So I ask you, dear listeners, what stories should we tell? Thus, my aim with Postcard Panorama is to tell stories about shortwave, and really all radio, by bringing poetry, flash fiction, guest stories, and listener anecdotes to the medium. With that in mind, here's another poem. This one by radio enthusiast C.R. Harper, which first appeared on the Haiku Foundation's website. Homeward trail, oh, to glimpse the stars, will one day be. A link to this poem is on our website, postcardpanorama.com. And now I'd like to share one of our listener stories. This one comes from Alex. In 1968, I was 7 years old, and my next-door neighbor invited my mother over for coffee one evening. I tagged along and was immediately impressed by a beautiful Philco floor model radio. My neighbor was a retired merchant marine captain. He fired up the radio, and we were listening to ship traffic from... It didn't matter. I was hooked ever since. I had countless 49 megahertz walkie-talkies, too many 11-meter and out radios. I talked with stations worldwide, but nothing compared to shortwave listening. I've had some gems, too. A Helicopter's S120, a realistic DX160, a DX150, a DX398, DX302, Zenith Transoceanic Royal 1000, a Texan PL660, and my newest, a Texan PL398BT. I am now 61 and listen daily. Some say shortwave radio is dead. I disagree. The end of the Cold War brought the end to some stations. However, with today's political climate, new stations are emerging monthly. Happy DXing. I agree with Alex. Thank you, Alex, for sending this along for the show. And now another poem, this one from Ford Maddox Ford. in Tenebrae. All within is warm, here without it's very cold. Now the year is grown so old, and the dead leaves swarm. And your heart is light, here without it's very dark. When shall I hear the lark? When say aright? Oh, for a moment's space, draw the clinging curtains wide, whilst I wait and yearn outside. Let the light fall on my face. This poem is in the public domain, and you can read it on the Academy of American Poets website, poets.org. I'll put the link to all the poems read on the show on our website, postcardpanorama.com. Here's another from C.R. Harper, which first appeared in Starline. New Age, our receding ley lines. Let's listen now to a radio origin story, this one from DJ Rosanna of Radio Northern Europe International.
Thank you, Tammy, for having me on the show. I think I first experienced shortwave radio in the mid-noughties. When I was little, I loved world music, and I remember listening to poor-quality Chinese music on this clunky old radio, and I remember not being able to tune into this station at all times. Looking back, that station must have been China Radio International. About 4 years ago, when I was setting up an RTL TV stick, I read that this stick could receive radio stations from all over the world, and I had to try it. It was fascinating to me that I could hear radio shows from China,
Radio International,
Romania, and Turkey.
This is the one from Turkey.
And I wouldn't have discovered these online. In 2017, I bought myself an Epon G3, set up a wire aerial, and found a world of radio stations that the TV stick could not hear. I started requesting QSL cards and found it really fun to receive beautiful postcards. In 2019, I got myself an RTL SDR V3 dongle, and I met Daz, who helped me further explore the hobby of digitally processing shortwave radio to make it sound amazing. I noticed that there was a lack of shortwave stations focused on Northern Europe, and I thought to myself, maybe one day I'll fill the gap. I had fun making a one-off broadcast that I called Radio Northern Europe International. I brought jingles,
Radio Northern Europe International,
messed around with embedding data in the final song, and sat on it for months. In February 2020, I finally got brave enough to broadcast it. When it went out on air, the response was amazing, and I decided to continue RMI as long as there was demand for it. I quickly teamed up with Dad to improve the sound quality, and with your host to bring This Is a Music Show to a wider audience. Over the next few shows, RMI grew with popularity. Me and Dad came up with a way to broadcast stereo over a normal shortwave transmitter, and we started working with small artists, making fun song introductions.
Hei, dette er Synne Hoff, og du hører min nye sang First på Radio Northern Europe International.
By the end of 2020, we were broadcasting in a high power on WRMI every week. Strongly believing that a diverse range of genres and presenters are more desirable for the listener, we invited Stephen from 16 Gwendolyn Street.
Welcome everyone to a series of short features on artists from around Northern Europe.
And Mama,
Välkommen to Mama's Mest Metal,
to present the second half an hour on WRMI, which has been fantastic. We have also started working with Carl from scandipop.co.uk, who selects our Song of the Month. Dad has recently developed EasyDRS, a ham DRM system that we use at the end of our shows to send animated trailers to people who are using the decoder. We've loved bringing Northern European music to the world while providing something fun to listen to on shortwave, and we hope to continue into the future. Thank you, Postcard Panorama, for inviting me to talk about my and RMI shortwave history.
Many thanks to DJ Rosanna for sharing her story. If you haven't listened to RMEI, I encourage you to do so. The website is rmei.org, and I put a link to that in our website, postcardpanorama.com. And another letter, this one from Lars. Got into shortwave and QSL verifications as a young teenager in the late 60s. In fall of 1971, living in New York City, I was listening to Voice of Vietnam from North Vietnam. I sent a reception report to Hanoi address. Months later, I received a note from my local post office. I had international mail, but I needed to sign papers and have a legal parent or guardian along with me. My father, then supportive of the war, was none too pleased. My U.S. post office made me sign papers, which my father told me not to ask for copies. And though I have filed FOIA requests, the U.S. government says that they cannot locate anything. The QSL shows a Viet Cong soldier with U.S. POW, along with the confirmation of my tech details of reception. Definitely a young mind involved in a hobby with no thoughts of current events, history, government, keeping tabs on its people, or making a parent very angry. I will say that at least the U.S. did not censor, or retaliate at me, which is more than I can say for most other countries. Stupid war. Too many youngsters lost their lives. For what? I was lucky. Draft ended before my card showed up. Thank you, Lars, for sending that in. Here's one last poem from C.R. Harper, which first appeared in Random Planets 2. Seed ships, the square root of infinity. And now one final story, this one from Brock. My radio story begins in the early 90s. I was about 8 or 9 years old, on a day when school was canceled due to a heavy snowstorm. I was at home playing with a toy electronics set my parents got me for my birthday. The set was a little advanced for my age, but I still enjoyed tinkering around with wires and building simple gadgets just by following the instruction booklet. On this snowy day, I built a simple radio and was immediately fascinated by how well it worked. I scanned the bands all day long until the evening sky turned pink, as it always did during snowstorms. I was amazed by how information flew through the sky, and the simple toy that I built let me receive it. This is still a very vivid memory after 30 years later. After that day, I listened to the radio mostly with my dad, who enjoyed scanning the shortwave bands in the evenings. In summer holidays, when we went on family trips, he always brought our radio, and it was great joy finding new stations wherever we went. My interest in radio waned over the years. As an adult, I mostly listened to public radio for news and classic rock stations while driving. Given we live in the internet era, I paid no attention to stations far away. During the COVID pandemic, my radio hobby has experienced a revival. I have been homesick and daydreaming about happy childhood memories. That snowy day reminded me of a long-lost interest. I got myself a world band radio and have been spending late nights signal hunting. It has been an escape from the chaotic times we are living to the cherished memories of my youth. Thank you for sending that in, Brock, and sharing that with us. Let's end with The Year's Awakening by Thomas Hardy. How do you know that pilgrim track along the belting zodiac, swept by the sun in his seeming rounds, is traced by now to the fish's bounds, and into the ram when weeks of clouds have wrapped the sky in a clammy shroud, and never as yet a tint of spring has shone in the earth's appareling. O whispering bird, how do you know? How do you know? How do you know, deep underground, hidden your bed from sight and sound, without a turn in temperature, with weather life can scarce endure, that light has won a fraction's strength, and day put on some moment's length, whereof in merest rote will come weeks hence mild airs that do not numb. O crocus root, how do you know? How do you know? This poem is in the public domain. And that's it for this first episode of Postcard Panorama. For more information about the show, including links to the poems, a list of upcoming things, and how to submit your story, visit postcardpanorama.com. Reception reports are welcome, and EQSLs are available. Send reception reports to postcard at postcardpanorama.com. Music is If You Were Here by Julie Maxwell. Find out more about her music at juliemaxwell.com. Thank you so much for listening, and hope to hear from you soon.
WRMI Radio Miami International, Okeechobee, Florida, USA. Contact us at info@wrmi.net. Visit us on the web at www.wrmi.net.